Hello, BookTube. It's Tuesday, and that means Tag Tuesday when BookTubers drop what they're doing and do tags, which can be a lot of fun. And I was actually tagged in an original tag. I was tagged in the perfect book tag, which was created by MJ at Reading This Life, who sort of drew it. She doesn't want to say that she weaponized it, but there's nothing wrong with weaponizing things. She drew inspiration from it for a video that Criminale did recently. Um, and it's all about not so much the content of the books you read, but the format of them. Fascinating subject. I could have stood 50 questions on the subject. So let's go through and see. I've got a ton of props here. I ordinarily never think to have props for my videos, but I've got a ton because this stuff really needs it. Number one is, what format is your perfect book? Hardcover, paperback, or even e-format? And for me, this immediately, the first question, shifts us into Schrodinger's cat territory. It shifts us into a world where we have to talk about multiple things at the same time. Because books don't have one form anymore. Ebooks have completely changed that. So when we're talking about a print book, there's no way that I can broaden the conversation to so that it envelops that and also ebooks. I have to talk about them sort of separately. so for a print book, I know exactly what form I want. I'll talk about the two of them together because my props sort of make that possible. Let's take, for instance, Lamentation by C.J. Sansom. This is a Matthew Shardlake murder mystery. It's set in Tudor England towards the end of the reign of King Henry VIII. Matthew Shardlake is a lawyer. He's from common stock, and yet he is familiar with court. He's familiar with a lot of the luminaries of the day. He is sympathetic towards the Reformed Church, and because of that, or in connection with that, he is also sympathetic with and known to Catherine Parr, the last wife of Henry VIII. And this is a great big thing. C.J. Sansom started these off with Dissolution and Dark Fire, which were relatively normal-sized murder mysteries. And the books have gotten bigger and bigger, and fans love that. So I don't think that's going to change as a trend. And this is the hardcover of Lamentation. So I believe this is a Methuen, a Mantle Pan Macmillan. So this is a UK hardcover of Lamentation. I believe that the hardcover of this in America is red and has a slightly different design. No actual picture of a bolt on a door. It's really well designed. You've got the gold stamping there and the embossed letters. The cover is very much along the lines of the Canadian design of Hilary Mantel's books. Her Cromwell books all sort of look like this. No people, no windows, no sunlight, no trees, no nothing. Just domestic architecture, which is a little bit bland in one sense, but very good, I have found, in another, because I've spent a lot of time with the Canadian UK trade paperbacks of the Wolf Hall books. This is evocative and simple, so it will always please you to look at. It will never bore you, and it will never date, and it's not dumb or ugly. So it's actually a very good compromise between the specificity of individual pictures and just a bland monochrome cover like you would get, for instance, in the old mass market paperbacks of A Song of Ice and Fire in America. And this hardcover has the binding like that. It has a built-in ribbon bookmark there that you can just barely make it out. This thing should be a little longer, ribbon bookmarks, because it's got to traverse the whole, it's got to circumnavigate the whole of the book in order to be useful as a bookmark. You're going to hold it down like that. But it has to be able to wrap all the way around the outside of the book in order for you to open it and put it back where it belongs. So it doesn't quite do that. I can easily picture this thing pulling off. The best ribbon bookmarks are loose enough and long enough so that they're not going to pull out of the book. But this is a hardcover. So it has a dust jacket, and it is really durable. This is a solidly made thing, which is good because I'm hard on my books, and I think a lot of people are. So that is a benefit to this book in hardcover. But the book also exists in a UK trade paperback. The UK trade paperback does not have a built-in bookmark. It does not have, in this case, deckled edges or French flaps on the cover. The cover is still gold stamped there. It is still embossed. It's the exact same design, but the spine on this is iffy. It's not supple at all. So an energetic reading of this thing where I am more involved in the story than I am in the care of the book, which is, keep in mind, the good outcome. That is the right way to read, is that you're so caught up in the story that you don't think about anything else. That's when the author is really doing their job. But when that happens with this book, I already know I'm going to tear this apart. The spine will be badly creased by the time I'm done with even a single reread, and maybe even whole blocks of the text will be coming out. Because this looks glued to me, and probably not very well glued either. If it were well glued, it would probably open a lot easier. So that, this has the advantage over the hardcover of the fact that it's lighter. And another advantage, I guess, at the point of purchase would be a lot less expensive. But it has weaknesses. But then there's a third volume. There's a third version. Here is my Kindle Paperwhite. There are many like it, but this one is mine. I have in this particular instance, usually I have my Paperwhite. This is, I think, the 2019 Kindle Paperwhite, or maybe 2020. It's not the brand new one, which is significantly wider and bigger. It's the last one with this dimension. And ordinarily, I would not have a cover on my Kindle Paperwhite, just because when I got it here at Hyde Cottage, I don't ever actually need it. I don't have a destructive mob of dogs, and the Kindle as itself, the naked Kindle, just the device without the cover, is extremely hardy as a device. It's a flat screen, so it's not accumulating any junk in the bezels. It's a really good, solid device. And this one has the electronic version of Lamentation. This is the new Kindle software update that allows you, the cover of the book you're reading, to be your screensaver, as opposed to ads or various backgrounds or whatever. A really good innovation on Kindle's part. They have been steadily making the Kindle reading experience better, except for the design of these recent Kindle Paperwhites, which put the power button right at the bottom, right next to the charging port. Those are the only things on this thing, are those two things. Which means that if you don't have a cover on this thing, you're naturally going to cup it in the palm of your hand. You're going to cup it in the soft of your hand and hold it like that, turning the pages with your thumb. And if you do that, you stand a much better than 50% chance of accidentally putting the thing in sleep mode. Often. I do not understand why that button is there, when it could be literally anywhere else. I mean, I do understand it. I know I can almost eavesdrop on the designer's wonkish meeting where that was agreed upon. And I bet I could reproduce the designer's thought, which is that they wanted a clean look. And the cleanest look possible for any kind of tablet device is to have nothing happening on any of the edges, or as little as possible. As little as possible happening anywhere. Which means you wouldn't want the two openings to be in two different places. You'd want them to be on one edge and the least conspicuous one. So that, because the whole point of a Kindle Paperwhite is to try to erase any awareness that you are reading an electronic book, that you're reading on a device. They want to erase any awareness of that, which means you don't want ports and buttons all over the place. You don't want them on the side or on the top. You want them inconspicuously tucked out of place. I'm sure that was the rationale at the design meeting, but it doesn't work. Only a designer, only an engineer could be this clueless. But you can train yourself. It doesn't take much work to train yourself for that not to happen. And this version is an EPUB. It's converted to Mobi format to go onto the Kindle, and it is not going to crack its spine. It, of course, is not heavy. And it also doesn't have to, I don't have to deal with limited real estate. If Matthew Shardlake makes a really good quip on this page, where am I supposed to note that? Well, I can do it on the spine, on the bottom there, or there's a little room on the side. What if there's more than one thing on that page that I want to note? Which probably wouldn't happen in a Tudor-era murder mystery, but it would certainly happen in an 800-page work of biblical commentary. I would have a host of comments that I would want to make. They wouldn't fit in the margins of the hardcover, and I would be tearing apart the paperback to do that, as I know well because I've annotated many trade paperback-sized Bibles until my annotations made the thing unworkable. This I can annotate it to my heart's content. I can annotate it all that I want. I have all the room in the world. It's never going to interfere with anything. There aren't any margins here. The annotations go on their own. They are annotated electronically onto the text. And I can also isolate them and send them to myself in an email, so that I don't even have to look for them in the book. I don't even have to call it up, as I would with this. And as I might have to do without even knowing precisely which book. Maybe I make an annotation on a Matthew Shardlake novel, but maybe it's not Lamentation. Maybe it's Sovereign or Dissolution, and I don't remember that. Well, I can search my notes electronically. I can't do that in a print book. So this thing is almost the Platonic ideal of the version of this book. It is not heavy. It does not take up any space. It does not limit me in terms of my annotation. It remembers where I am, so it doesn't need either a tasseled bookmark or a built-in cloth bookmark. It doesn't need any of that. The only thing it needs is electronic power. It needs electricity every once in a while, every once in a month or so, a month and a half, thereabouts. I'm always around electricity. I'm always around electric plugs. I have the power cord. I can plug it into my computer while I'm writing. Not think about it at all, and an hour later, it's completely full and ready for another month and a half. So this is another version of Lamentation. Now, there's another version that I can show you, as long as we're talking about ideal versions of a book. There's this. There's Lamentation, the epub, not a Mobi file. This is an epub file on my iPad mini. Same thing in terms of the fact that it doesn't take up any space, doesn't need any dusting, doesn't need any packing or moving. If I move, can take all the annotations that I could give it. I could write a whole novel on this thing if I wanted to. Remembers where I am, defines words that I don't know, changes the font size if I feel like having the font size changed. The only difference between this version of Lamentation and this version of Lamentation is that this is just me and the book. There's nothing else I can do on this. I can only read the book. It's marvelously concentrating and oddly peaceful. Whereas this, well, I can concentrate on the book. I am not, after all, a denizen of the 21st century. I still have the ability to control myself. But this has everything else as well. This has Voxer, this has Instagram and Twitter and my email has needy editors who need, to be burped or who are colicky or whatever. And I know all of that. On this device, I know all of that. I still have self-control to enjoy the book. And if the book is doing its job, I won't need self-control. It will take me over. It will sweep me away. But in the back of my mind, this is better illuminated, obviously. Some people have, their eyes have a problem with the backlit here, and they much prefer. This is not backlit. This Kindle comes with a light, but you don't need to use it. I don't have that kind of eye strain, so I don't really care that this is backlit. That's not an issue. But the issue is that while I'm reading this, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I don't need to go anywhere. I could use this device to check what the outside world is doing. So there are pros and cons to all of these different versions of this book. So that's my answer to question number one. What is your format for your perfect book? If it's an ebook, I think that right now, anyway, when I'm answering this, the edge goes to this. Just the book on the simplest Kindle. Just that the Paperwhite actually is not the simplest Kindle. There is a basic Kindle that's $50 less. And I've never actually tried that device. It does have bezels, whereas this is just a flat screen. It has fewer pixels per inch, PPI, the measurement of how sharp the text is on the page. But from what I've seen, your eyes won't notice it. I've never actually tried that. That is, in fact, the simplest Kindle experience. But this is the next one. And I have found, in the surest way possible, that you can sort of litmus test these things, that when I want to read a book, I reach for this little device. I do it before I do any other version. The iPad, the paperback, the hardcover, I reach for this before I do anything else. Usually it doesn't have this cover on it, but that's what I do. So I'm going to say that if I had to choose all formats, this would be my favorite. But if we're talking just books, well, I have an age-old fondness for paperbacks. I really like them. I like their simplicity, their accessibility. Hardcovers are bigger and harder to store. But this particular paperback, it's a UK trade paperback, and I like those a lot. There's something about the size and heft of them that I like. But if it's a paperback, a trade paperback, there are some folderols that I like, and they're missing from this version. So I brought out another prop. I brought out the UK trade paperback of Wolf Hall by Hilary Mantel. You see what I mean, right? It's this domestic architecture look. This is a bolted piece of wood. This is an old wooden door with a bolt thrown. Very evocative, I think. I like this design. But this is much more flexible. The binding is much better than Lamentation. And it has the deckled edges, and it has the French flaps. And those are just little things that I like. I wish, for myself, I wish that every book came with these options, where you could, if you wanted, pay for a trade paperback with nice floppy binding, with deckled edges and French flaps. I would like it if I had a whole library of books like that. So if I had to choose electronic, it would be this. I don't know how all these flashy booktubers handle all their props at the same time. I'm already confused. Electronic, it would be this. Not anything bigger, not on my iPad, not my iPad mini, not even the Kindle Oasis. It would just be this. And if it were print, it would be trade paperback, but it would be a trade paperback with all the bells and whistles. It would have the better binding, the French flaps, the deckled edges. I would love to have a whole library like that. But that's question number 1. We're at 20 minutes already. Question number 3 is next. There's a little bit of pagination problems with the numbers here. How about how many pages is your perfect book? For me, anything over 800 pages. Because I read really fast. Much faster than the average reader does. I read 120 to 150 pages an hour. And I read for a long time every day. A huge chunk of every day is devoted just to reading. You might think that a huge chunk of every day for me is devoted to making videos, but if you look, you'll see it's a small number of hours. I read very fast, which means that one of the great feelings that readers have, most of you have this feeling, that feeling of being lost in a book, just caught up in it, where you're enjoying it, but you've got this vast terrain around you, including in front of you, that you haven't crossed yet. I love that feeling too. Every reader loves that feeling. But I don't get that feeling in a book that's 250 or 300 pages long. I don't have time to get it. So I like a longer book, provided it's not just wasting my time. I don't want that those extra pages to just be the author adding in adjectives, and plenty of them do that. But if the book can carry that weight, that's my ideal weight, 800 to 1,000 pages, so that I can feel that too, that feeling of being lost in a book. Question number 2 comes after question number 3. Are you particular as to where the chapters begin? Here I agree with MJ in her video. The chapter should be discrete. I don't care how much white space is on the final page of the previous chapter. Every chapter should start on the right-hand side. It shouldn't start after the last chapter. It certainly, God forbid, shouldn't be on the same page. Question number 3, we're at 3 again. This is actually question number 4, is are you particular where the page numbers are located? I myself like them in the bottom center, but I can also handle upper right-hand side. And then question number 4, which is question number 5, favorite font. Do you check to see the font details? I don't. It's a kind of aspect of reading fandom, reading enthusiasm that I have never understood. I've never got into it at all. I've seen so many books where the author or the publisher makes a point of devoting a whole blank page to specifically telling you about the type font of the book. I could not care less. I couldn't tell them apart in a police lineup. So it's just one of those reading subjects, a rare part of reading that is just a blank for me. I don't understand it. I don't want to understand it. It doesn't interest me. I don't know anything about it. So no, I'm not. I don't care. Then question number 5 is, do margins matter to you? And they do, for the reasons that I mentioned in my enormous answer to number 1, which is margins are where I talk to the book. And I do a lot of talking to my books. So, a trade paperback, or worse, a mass market paperback, I don't have one of those as one of my props, but you know what I'm talking about, the little paperbacks. There's virtually no room to do that, especially if the book is really good and therefore is calling for a lot of conversation. I remember, what was the example? A long time ago, Anthony Burgess wrote a book called Man of Nazareth, a historical novel about Jesus Christ. And I was talking and arguing with that book, underlining it, quoting it, marginating it endlessly. And I got about halfway done with it and thought, I'm never going to be able to use this again. I might as well stop reading and just get the book out from the library and try to leave it alone, or get a hardcover or something. There weren't any ebooks at the time. Margins mean a lot to me for that reason. I very much engage with the books that I read, which is another reason why I really, really like ebooks, because it's yet another thing about an ebook I don't have to worry about. Question number 6 is, does your perfect book have any other unique features that make it perfect? If yes, please share. Not any more than I have already mentioned. Ebooks that I would read on my Kindle have an enormous number of great features. Kindle added this, where the book you're reading is the screensaver of your device. That's a little detail, but it means a lot. It's really good. I also like when the ebook for Purveyor, the platform or whatever, makes a little graphic out of turning pages. Kindle ebooks don't do that, but I like it when they do. Like, for instance, on the iPad, there is a graphic for turning pages that feels like that, instead of just tapping a screen to make a screen shift to a different screen. But by and large, I can change the font, I can change the internal lighting, I can annotate to my heart's content, I can store it without taking up any space at all, I can hunt for it. In a large collection, I think there are 500 books on this device. And I've said many times, both in real life and also on this channel, how much I wish that I could walk into a room here at Hyde Cottage and call out the name of a book and have it answer me so I knew where it was, instead of spending a long time searching for it. Well, I can actually do that on this thing, so that's no small thing. When it comes to paperbacks, I mentioned my ideal features. I want a good binding, something that I won't destroy it. I want the French flaps. I'm a big fan of them. And also deckled edges. I know deckled edges have their haters on BookTube and off BookTube, but I'm not one of them. I just love them for whatever reason. I know they make it harder to navigate the book, especially as a book reviewer. You have to navigate from the flat pages at the bottom or the flat pages at the top. The deckled edges, forget about it. I love it anyway, even despite that. And number 7 is, show us the cover. What do you find perfect about it? And here, I mean, I can show you all kinds of covers. Some are succinct genius, like the movie poster cover to Peter Benchley's novel Jaws. Doesn't really get much better than that. But the variety of what I showed you here, this cover for Lamentation does a really good job. I don't want a cover that I'm going to get bored with, but I also don't want a cover that is itself boring. A sort of a compromise like this, or for instance, another compromise along those lines would be if a book uses a classical piece of artwork, a detail from a painting or a piece of Greek sculpture or something like that. That is pleasing to the eye and also intriguing to the eye, something that I'm not going to mind looking at for the whole of the life of the book. And it doesn't get boring. But it's not so specific that... When I think about specific covers, I'm thinking about a lot of the covers for the Wheel of Time novels, Robert Jordan's fantasy series. Some of those covers stop being covers and just become in-jokes for readers who've been stuck with the series for 10 books. Some of those covers don't make any sense at all. They're not dramatic compositions. Instead, they are literal photographs of individual scenes in the book that don't make any sense unless you've read the whole series. So you look at the cover, if you haven't read the series, you say, I don't even know what's going on here. This is weird. I don't prefer stuff like that. I much prefer things like this, where I'm not turned off, but I'm not overly invested either. That's and then the last item here is to tag people, but I don't have any idea who to tag. So this is a really good tag. I'll leave a link to the original. It's a really good tag. And it's exactly the kind of nosy thing that I just love. So I encourage anyone who sees this video, if you have a BookTube channel, do it, because I would love to see your answers. But anyway, that is the perfect book tag. I'm going to wrap this up for Tuesday, but I will be back. Thank you, BookTube.